Hi students, so I wanted to give just very brief highlights for chapter 5 content in this part of video. This is going to be part 1 for chapter 5, which is cost behavior and CVP analysis. CVP stands for cost volume profit analysis. And in the second part of the video, I will go over some of the illustration problems, typical problems that you will find useful, most likely, to complete your in-class activity and some of your homework. Okay, so chapter 5 consists of two components. The first part talks about cost behavior, and some of this topic should be familiar to us from chapter 1. So when we're talking about cost behavior, we are talking about three types of costs. We're talking about fixed costs, variable costs, and mixed costs. So first group is fixed costs. This is the rule. So when we produce more units, when the volume increases, when we make more units, total fixed cost remains the same. But if I look at fixed cost per unit, if I produce more units, if the volume increases, my fixed cost per unit decreases. And that leads to the concept known as the economies of scale. So, if I pay $1,000 rent and I make 1 unit, then my fixed cost per unit is 1,000. But if I make 2 units, it's going to be 500. And if I make 10 units, it's going to be 100. And the more units I make, the less fixed cost per unit becomes. The second group is known as variable costs, and these are the rules. So direct materials, direct labor would be examples of variable costs. If I make more units, volume increases, my total variable cost goes up. So the line will go up like this. It will go up like this. But my variable cost per unit remains the same. Per unit remains the same. So if I have to spend $2 in direct materials per unit, that per unit cost does not change, but the total increases. And the last group is known as mixed costs. And mixed cost has both components. It has the fixed cost component, and then it has variable cost component. So this is the formula to use to calculate mixed cost. Fixed cost plus variable cost per unit multiplied by units produced. And in order to separate the components of mixed cost, in order to separate fixed cost and variable cost components, you will use so-called high-low method. There are 3 steps. Read about it in the book. Go through the examples. Okay. Second part of the chapter deals with CVP analysis. What happens if I produce more units? What will happen with my profit? What will happen with my cost? What's the relationship among really 5 components? So like also sales, cost, volume, profit, and net income. So there is a bunch of formulas you need to use here. The first concept with the first 4 formulas is contribution margin. So let me open this up. So contribution margin right here. Let me go this way. So contribution margin is simply the difference between sales and variable cost. So what is left after we pay for variable cost? How much money is left to pay for fixed cost and then to keep profit? Contribution margin, again, is the difference between sales and variable cost. Contribution margin per unit is sales price per unit, sales, I should say here, price per unit, minus variable cost per unit. Companies use so-called contribution margin income statement instead of a regular GAAP statement. So the regular income statement is used for external reporting, but we will be using contribution margin income statement in next chapter, in chapter 6, also in chapter 9. It's not GAAP, it's not allowed to be filed for external users, but managers find it much more useful. So the format is different. It's simply sales minus variable costs equals to contribution margin. Then we subtract fixed costs and we get net income. So in the regular income statement, we go sales minus COGS equals to gross profit minus operating expenses equals to net income. Net income will be the same, but the format and how we classify costs will be different. Okay, and then also, guys, you see here we have a contribution margin ratio, and that's a percentage. And the formula, you take contribution margin and you divide it by sales. So contribution margin ratio, for example, it says, it's 40%. So from every dollar of sales, I have 40 cents left to first cover fixed cost, and then whatever is left, that's my net income, that's my profit. So if my contribution margin is 40%, that means I spent 60 cents on the dollar to cover variable costs, and then I have 40 cents left to cover fixed cost and earn net income. So the next concept is break-even. Break-even. So break-even point is the point at which is very important for us to know. It's a point when my net income is equal to 0. It's a point at which my sales are equal to my costs, right? My sales are equal to costs, so I am neither at loss, I'm neither at a loss or at a profit. So these are the formulas. We can calculate break-even in units. How many units do I have to sell? Guys, everywhere here we assume we sell just one type of product. How many units do I have to sell to break even? This is the formula. Fixed costs divided by contribution margin per unit from right here. Or break even in dollars. What should be my sales revenue in dollars to break even? You take fixed cost and divide by contribution margin ratio from right here. Also, we can find the break-even point using a chart, a graph, and I want you to read about it in the book. So there is a bunch of other formulas. There is margin of safety. This is the formula. There is units sales at target income. So if I want to make some specific amount of profit income, how many units should I sell? So this is the formula. You take fixed cost plus the desirable target income and divide it by contribution per margin. Or another formula is what would be a dollar sale at target income? I want profit of $50,000. What should be my sales revenue in dollars? And this is the formula. Fixed cost plus the target income, $50,000, divided by contribution margin ratio. The last concept in this chapter could get confusing. What if we produce more than one product? What if I have 2 products, 3 products? I have a multi-product company. I have a mix, right? So these are the steps. Here are the steps. These are the steps to follow. Instead of going over them right now, I'm going to actually go over these steps in the next part of the video, when I'm going to cover a problem where we will have 2 types of product. That will be the last problem in our illustration problem in video part 2. Okay, so this is it. This is pretty much these are the highlights of the concepts of your chapter. Of course, you still should be reading the book. You still should be watching the interactive presentation because these are just some highlights. Thank you. Bye.